So look, in my opinion, the standard version of Windows 11 is a mess. I'm talking about from the time that you just install Windows, where you have to go through the OOBE phase and you're forced into a Microsoft account. You see a bunch of ads during the OOBE setup screens. Microsoft 365 is forced on you. Xbox Pass is forced on you. By the time you get to the desktop, the start menu is bloated with apps that you don't even want installed. Stuff like Microsoft Edge and OneDrive being forced on you without you even wanting to use them. The widgets on the taskbar, the ads in the start menu search, constant notifications, default Windows Spotlight wallpapers that just acts as a gateway for more ads, and any other annoyances you might have in Windows 11. Now, right here on the screen, I've got one of these stock Windows installs that I just described to you, but I've also got Winhance, which is an application that I developed to fix all of these annoyances that I just mentioned. With Winhance, you can remove the Windows apps and features that you don't want on your system. You can also apply a ton of optimizations related to privacy and security, power optimizations, gaming and performance settings, Windows update settings, notification settings, and sound settings. You can also apply customizations like Windows theme settings, taskbar settings, start menu settings, and Windows File Explorer settings. For example, if you wanted to apply the classic context menu in Windows 11, which, if you didn't know, is if you right-click, this is the new context menu in Windows 11, but if you click on Show More Options, this is known as the classic context menu. So if you always want it to be displayed this way, then you can just apply the classic context menu in Winhance, and that'll then be applied to Windows 11. And this will now be the default context menu. If you wanted to apply some gaming optimizations to your Windows installation, then you can just come over to the gaming and performance section and toggle the settings that you want to toggle to get better performance when running games on Windows. If you wanted to remove or uninstall any of these Windows apps and features, then you can just select the items that you want to uninstall, click on Remove Selected Items, confirm the prompt, and it'll then uninstall those items that you just selected to be uninstalled. Now, while you can do all of this manually and go through every setting yourself, Winhance also has the option to import the recommended config file. And if you select that option, at the time of this recording, it's going to uninstall 48 of these Windows apps, and you can choose to process the app removals instantly, or you can just select the checkboxes and do it yourself manually afterwards if you want to make changes to it. The same goes for external apps, and these will be installed automatically, or you can choose to install them manually afterwards. You can then apply all of the optimization settings in each of these categories, as well as the customization settings, also clean the taskbar, clean the start menu, and also choose to apply the default wallpaper for the selected theme in the Windows theme section, which in this case will be the dark mode wallpaper. So if you wanted to fix all of the annoyances that I mentioned at the start of this video in 1 to 2 minutes, then you can just import the recommended config file. I would recommend to just uncheck the external apps section for now so that it doesn't install any apps. Then click on OK, review the items that'll be removed from Windows, and these are all displayed on a list. Now I'm happy with all of that, so I'll just click on yes, and it'll then apply the recommended config, and all you have to do is sit back, relax, and watch while Winhance enhances Windows with the desired settings. And once this is done, you'll have a Windows 11 experience that's much better than the stock version of Windows 11. Once it's done, you'll see that the configuration has been applied successfully, and if you close this prompt and minimize Winhance, you'll now be inside of a much cleaner and much faster Windows 11 installation. If I open the start menu, there are absolutely no pinned apps and no recommended section. You can then go ahead and pin any apps to the start menu that you want to use. For example, the File Explorer and settings. You can also see that the taskbar is completely clean. There are no pinned apps, no widgets, no search bar, none of that whatsoever. And you can pin the items to the taskbar that you want to use. For example, the File Explorer, I can pin that to the taskbar for easy access. If we go to the settings, some of the stuff that were changed is in the notifications section of system. Notifications have been disabled. Privacy and security settings, all of those items have been disabled so that you don't get personalized offers and personalized ads in Windows. Same thing with all of these other permissions, speech permissions, inking and typing. diagnostics and feedback, it's all been disabled to reduce telemetry, and the Windows update has been set to only check for updates and not install them automatically. And it's also just going to check for security updates and prompt you to install those. No feature updates will be installed by default. In the File Explorer, it also opens to this PC by default, and some of the file and folder options has been enabled by default, like showing file name extensions and hidden items, and some of the items in the navigation pane have been removed, like the gallery and home folders, which I don't think a lot of people use anyway. So that's how you can take the stock standard version of Windows 11 and remove most of the annoyances from it in just 1 to 2 minutes if Windows was already installed. Now, when you run Winhance for the very first time, it is going to create a system restore point, and this is just so that you have a way of going back to a previous version of Windows before you ever ran Winhance on your computer, so that if something goes wrong or you just want to revert the changes, you can just use this Windows restore point to revert all of the changes. Winhance also has some advanced tools called WinUtil, or the Windows Installation Media Utility, where you can create custom ISO files, and you can also generate an auto-unattended XML file. If you don't know what an auto-unattended XML file is, it's an official Microsoft feature where you can add this file to a Windows ISO to customize Windows during the installation, and it's generated based on your selections in Winhance. So only apps selected on the Windows app screen will be uninstalled automatically during the Windows installation process, and the settings in the optimize and customize screens will be added according to their current state in Winhance. So you can use this feature to debloat, optimize, and customize Windows during the Windows installation process, so that by the time that you get to the desktop, Windows will look like this already, where you'll have a start menu with no pinned items, a taskbar with no pinned items, no widgets. All the privacy settings will already be set up for you. All the File Explorer settings will already be set up for you. All the power settings will be already set up for you. Basically, all the Windows settings will already be set up for you, and you'll just have to install any external software that you use, like browsers or any other software, but you don't have to waste time changing any Windows settings or getting Windows set up the way that you want it to be set up. Imagine you do a clean install of Windows using the official Windows 10 or 11 ISO file from Microsoft, and once you get to the desktop, it looks like this. There's no Microsoft Edge or OneDrive, no pre-installed bloatware apps like the widgets or Copilot, for example, and the start menu is clean. And then when you look at the privacy settings, it's all disabled, and Windows is just fast, smooth, and really responsive without you even having to do anything to get it to that point. So you might be wondering how that's even possible. Well, listen up and don't skip through this video, because I'll show you exactly how you can do it too.
The hero we needed.
It doesn't matter. Once you update Windows, all the settings will be reverted. It's Windows' self-healing ability, which can even cause corruption in some cases.
But will it stay debloated?
What would happen if you install updates?
Can I install the Windows clipboard afterwards?
I need the old Internet Explorer on Windows 10. What should I change in the XML?
How can I make so the taskbar is on the center instead of on the left?
How to disable update till 2077?
It's been over a year since I released the first version of UnattendedWinstall or even updated the XML answer file. But today, that changes. I just released a new version of UnattendedWinstall that'll debloat and optimize Windows 10 or Windows 11 during the installation process, so that you end up with a clean install just like this. A completely clean start menu, only the most needed and most useful Windows apps, and no Microsoft Edge, OneDrive, Copilot or Recall, by the way, disabled notifications, optimized privacy settings, and managed Windows updates, so that you have more control over your installation of Windows. Now, in case you don't know how this is even possible or how this works, let me give you a quick breakdown. Microsoft has an official deployment feature called answer files or unattended files, which you can add to Windows images, or also called Windows ISO files. These answer files can be used to modify Windows settings on the Windows image, and they're executed during different phases of the Windows installation process. It's something that Microsoft developed to make mass deployments of Windows computers easier and faster, like in corporate environments, for example. because you can automate many parts of the Windows installation process and decide how you want Windows to be configured once it's installed. What I like about using an answer file is that it's generally very safe because you can see every single change it's going to make to the Windows image by inspecting the answer file. There's also no need to download custom ISO files from unofficial sources because you insert it on the official Windows 10 or 11 ISO file that you download directly from Microsoft. And then lastly, it's also not dependent on any third-party tools because it's an official Microsoft feature. Now I'm using this Microsoft feature to debloat, optimize and customize Windows during the installation process so that by the time I load into Windows, everything is already set up for me and only the Windows apps I actually use are installed. Because let's be honest, Windows has a ton of bloatware these days. And then after this, the only thing left to do is to install the external software that I use and sign into the various websites that I use on a browser. The rest is pretty much set up already. And if I go and install all of the latest Windows updates and any of the bloatware gets reinstalled, like Microsoft Edge, OneDrive, or any of the other items for that matter, it'll just be uninstalled automatically the next time Windows starts up. This is done via the task scheduler in Windows, and if you want to prevent the automatic app uninstalls from taking place, you can just delete or disable the scheduled tasks associated with it. Now at this point, you're probably wondering how you can do a clean install of Windows with an answer or unattended XML file. The Windows setup automatically searches for answer files in specific locations on the Windows installation media. One of these locations is the root folder, meaning the main folder of the ISO that contains all of the Windows setup files. If you include a file called autounattend.xml with these files, the Windows setup will find it and execute the commands that are contained in it during different parts of the Windows installation process. There are a few different methods to include the XML file on the installation media, and I've already created in-depth guides on these, including video tutorials. And you can find all of that on the UnattendedWinstall GitHub page that's linked in the description of this video, along with the video tutorials themselves. But I'm still going to briefly mention some of them here, along with my recommended method. To start, you'll need to download the autounattend.xml file from the UnattendedWinstall GitHub page. Now to do that, you can simply click on the file right here, and then on the next page, you'll have this download button here. And then when you click on that, it's going to download the file. Now you can add this XML file to Windows installation media using one of the following methods. Method 1. You can create a Windows 10 or 11 bootable USB flash drive with Microsoft's media creation tool, and then you can just copy the autounattend.xml file to the root of the USB flash drive. Method 2. You can create a Windows 10 or 11 bootable USB flash drive with Rufus, and then copy the autounattend.xml file to the root of the USB flash drive. Just be sure not to select any of these checkboxes in Rufus, as it's going to create another answer file, potentially overriding the settings that you've defined in the autounattend.xml file that you copy to the USB flash drive. Method 3, you can use AnyBurn to edit a Windows 10 or 11 ISO file, add the autounattend.xml file to it, and then save a new version of the ISO file. This new ISO file can then be used to install Windows in a virtual machine, or you can create a bootable USB flash drive with Wintoys, copy the ISO file to it, and then install Windows using the Wintoys USB flash drive. This is what you would do if you wanted to install Windows on physical hardware. Method 4, and this is my recommended method. You can use Winhance, another utility that I developed, which contains the Windows Installation Media Utility, or WinUtil for short. With WinUtil, you can select a Windows 10 or Windows 11 ISO file and extract the contents of it to your computer. Once it's extracted, you can add an autounattend.xml file to it. At the time of this recording, you can add either an XML created by Winhance, the latest UnattendedWinstall XML, which means you don't have to download it manually from GitHub, like I showed you earlier, or you can select another XML file that you might have created yourself, or with another XML generation service like Schneegens, for example. It's important to note, you can choose only one of these options. XML files from different services don't work together. In the next step, you'll be able to extract and add the drivers from the current operating system that you're using WinUtil on to create this ISO file, And this is why I strongly recommend that you use this method, because Windows will automatically install all of the drivers during the setup process too, which can also save you a ton of time and frustration when reinstalling Windows. Now, step 2 and 3 are optional. If you only wanted to use Winutil to add drivers to your Windows installation media, and you don't want to use an auto-unattend XML file, then you can use Winutil just for that. But in the final step, you can choose a location to save the new ISO file, and then you can click on Start Creating to start creating that new ISO file. Once it's done, just like in method 3, you can use the new ISO file to install Windows in a virtual machine, or you can use Wintoys to create a bootable USB flash drive so you can boot from it and then install Windows on physical hardware. The Windows installation process will be standard, and you'll still have to select your region and language, provide a valid Windows product key or select the option that you don't have one, and format and create a partition to install Windows on. During the Windows installation process, the autounattend.xml file will be read and the commands in it will be executed. After that, when you get to the Windows out-of-box or onboarding experience, you'll only be able to create a local account. You can't sign in with a Microsoft account here, but you will still be able to create an additional user account later on, and you can sign in with a Microsoft account on that user account if you really want that. When you load into Windows for the first time and you see the desktop, you'll be pleasantly surprised to see that it is clean, bloat-free, and feels responsive, the way Windows should be. If you created the ISO file with Winutil, and you chose to include the device drivers in the Windows installation media, they should also be installed already, but just in case they're not, you can manually install them by selecting Update Driver in Device Manager, choosing the Browse My Computer option, then navigating to the C drive, selecting the Windows folder, and then select the drivers folder. Make sure the checkbox is selected to include subfolders, and then continue with the installation. The device driver should install successfully if all goes well. Now, since there's no browser installed, or any other software for that matter, you'll need a way to install it. Starting with version 3 of UnattendedWinstall, I've made it so that there's a synergy between Winhance and UnattendedWinstall, and I've included a shortcut on the desktop to download and install Winhance. So make sure you're connected to the internet, and then double-click on this Install Winhance file on the desktop, and it's then going to download Winhance and prompt you to install it. Once Winhance has launched, you can navigate to the External Software section, then choose the software that you want to install, and click on the Install button to start the installation. Now, I strongly advise that you use Winhance to install any Windows apps or to change any settings that you want to change in Windows after doing a clean Windows install with UnattendedWinstall. The reason for this is Winhance will automatically update any of the removal scripts with your selections if you use it to reinstall Windows apps. For example, if you install Microsoft Edge with Winhance, it'll automatically delete the Edge removal script and scheduled task, so that Edge isn't automatically uninstalled the next time you start up your computer. In contrast, if you were to install Edge manually without Winhance, Edge would be removed automatically the next time you load into Windows, except if you manually delete or disable the scheduled task in Task Scheduler. Now, I just used Edge as an example, but this goes for any Windows app, legacy capability, or optional feature that you'll find in the Windows Apps and Features section of Winhance. You should install or enable it using Winhance to ensure that it'll stay installed. You also have control over these removal scripts and scheduled tasks if you click on the Help button in the Windows Apps and Features section. You can click on the relevant removal status icons, which will delete the script and task associated with it. But keep in mind, any bloatware that might be reinstalled with a Windows update will not be removed automatically anymore. Another reason I recommend using Winhance is you can see all of the settings that UnattendedWinstall modified during the Windows installation, and you can change any of these settings according to your preference using Winhance. That is one of the reasons I created Winhance, to give users a way to revert the changes that were made by the UnattendedWinstall answer file. Now you might be thinking, how can I edit this XML answer file? I mean, you might not like the fact that the calculator or Paint is installed, or maybe you actually want to keep Microsoft Edge, or maybe you want to have light mode be the default instead of dark mode. Well, you can open the XML file in any code editor and then make the changes manually if you know how, or ask an AI model to help you. But I would advise you to just create your own XML file with Winhance in that case. I just released a new version of Winhance recently, where you can now create your own auto_unattend.xml answer file based on your app and setting selections in Winhance. This way, you have full control over what apps are removed and what settings are applied. And since UnattendedWinstall version 3 and onwards are created by Winhance and share a synergy with Winhance, you're not losing anything if you create your own file. In fact, you're gaining the ability to create the perfect version of Windows 10 or Windows 11 for you. What if I told you that most Windows 10 users are being blocked from upgrading to Windows 11 by Microsoft's hardware requirements, but there's actually a tool that makes it really easy to bypass Microsoft's restrictions and check your computer's real compatibility. In the next few minutes, I'll show you exactly how to use Flyby11 to upgrade your Windows 10 PC to Windows 11, while giving you the absolute best chance of keeping all of your files, settings, and apps exactly as they are. Now, here's the problem most people run into when they try to upgrade. First, they get blocked by Microsoft's hardware compatibility checker, even though their PC can actually run Windows 11. Second, they download the wrong Windows 11 installation media, which prevents them from keeping all their files, settings, and apps. And third, they end up with repeated failed upgrade attempts and their PC keeps getting rolled back to Windows 10. Now, Flyby11 solves the first problem really easily. The second one I'm going to show you the best chance of solving in this video. And then the third one is a little bit more complicated, but I'll mention your options later on in the video. But before we get started, let me just say that this video is for educational purposes only. I'm not telling you that you must use Flyby11, and I'm also not telling you that you must upgrade to Windows 11. I'm simply providing you with a tutorial on how to do something and also giving you troubleshooting steps along the way. Let's get started. So Flyby11 is available on GitHub, and to download it, you'll need to scroll down till you get to the releases section here and then click on the latest release. Then if you scroll down on the next page, you'll find the Flyby11 zip file. You can click on that to download it. Then just open it in the downloads folder, extract the files. Once it's extracted, just open the folder and then you can run the Flyby11 application. You might get a smart screen prompt. You can just click on more info and then run anyway. And then Flyby11 will be launched with the Windows 11 compatibility check. So you'll see that it checks for CPU pop count and SSE 4.2 instructions. Now I need to be completely clear about something important. There are two different types of requirements for Windows 11. You get Microsoft's artificial requirements like TPM and Secure Boot and so on, which can be bypassed. And then you get the real hardware limitations, like these CPU instructions that can't be bypassed. But I've made a detailed video about this already, and you can find that linked in the description below if you want to know more about these differences. But as you can see, the upgrade probability for this computer is very high. If one of these checks failed, then you'll most probably not be able to upgrade to Windows 11 24H2, but you'll still be able to run older versions of Windows 11. So to be crystal clear, Flyby11 bypasses Microsoft's artificial hardware requirements, but it also honestly tells you if your CPU has the actual technical requirements that was introduced in Windows 11 24H2. But we're going to go ahead and start the upgrade process, so you can just click on Start Upgrade Now. And then you'll get to the next screen where we need to provide it with a Windows 11 ISO file that it can use to start the upgrade process. Now here's the crucial part that most people get wrong. Now you can see the developer here says that you can download the latest ISO file from the official Microsoft website or use the Fido downloader, which is recommended by the developer. But I'm going to show you a specific method using Microsoft's media creation tool that'll give you the absolute best chance of keeping all of your files, settings, and apps during the upgrade process. So on the Windows 11 downloads page here, if you scroll down all the way to the bottom, you can download the Windows 11 ISO file directly, and that is usually what I do. However, in this video, we're going to be using the media creation tool. So click on download now to download the media creation tool. And I'll show you in just a moment why we want to use this tool. Once it's downloaded, just open it, select any prompts if you do get any, and then after a while, the media creation tool should be launched on your computer. Just go ahead and accept the terms. On the next screen, you'll see the select language and edition screen. Now, this is exactly why we're using the media creation tool, because we have the option to use the recommended options for this computer that we're downloading the ISO file from. So this will give us the best chance of keeping our files, settings, and apps when we get to the upgrade process. So leave this exactly as is, then click on next. Then you want to choose the ISO file option, click next. And then you can just save this anywhere on the computer. I'm going to save it on the desktop and then just call it Windows 11 and then just click on save. And now that's going to start the download process of the Windows 11 ISO file. Okay, so once the download completes, we'll feed this ISO file into FlyOOBE 11 and then it'll automatically handle the upgrade process for us. So once the media creation tool is finished downloading the ISO file, you can just click on finish and it will close the media creation tool, and then you'll have the ISO file wherever you saved it on the computer. For me, it was the desktop, so I'm just going to select it and then drag and drop it into this part of the upgrade assistant window here by FlyOOBE 11. And when I do that, it'll mount the ISO file. Then it's going to run the setup on that ISO file to bypass the hardware requirements. And as we can see here, the Windows 11 installation can now proceed. Please follow the on-screen instructions in the setup window. So you can ignore the fact that it says install Windows Server. It'll just upgrade whichever edition of Windows you currently have. If I go and have a look at the system settings of this computer, this is Windows 10 Pro. So this will be upgraded to Windows 11 Pro. So to continue, I usually change how setup downloads Windows updates and then click on not right now. And I also uncheck this box to help make the installation better. Then you can just click on next. It's going to do some checks on the computer, and this is usually where it checks if your PC meets the Windows 11 hardware requirements. But because we're using the FlyOOBE 11 upgrading assistant that uses the Windows Server setup method, it just skips past those checks and then you can accept the terms. And here comes the moment of truth, the screen that determines if you can actually keep everything or not. Then next, you can choose what you want to keep. And this is the important part which I mentioned earlier, why we were using the media creation tool to download the ISO file, because that ensured that the ISO file that we downloaded from Microsoft has the exact same settings as the computer that we want to upgrade to Windows 11. If the ISO file doesn't have the exact same language and region settings as the PC that you're trying to upgrade, then you probably won't see this option here, and you'll only be able to keep your personal files, or you'll even be able to keep nothing. But if you want to keep everything, all your files, settings and apps exactly like it is on Windows 10, then this is the option that you want to use, and you can click on next. It's going to do some final checks. And once that's done, you'll see a summary of what is about to happen. And if you're ready to install, you can just click on install, and that is going to start the Windows 10 to Windows 11 upgrade process. Now, once the installation completes, you'll boot directly into Windows 11 with all of your files, settings, and apps exactly as you had them before on Windows 10. Now, the first thing that you'll want to do now is check for Windows updates to ensure that you have the latest security patches and drivers installed for optimal performance. If for some reason the updates aren't working, just pause the updates for 7 days, and then immediately after that you can resume them again and then check for updates again, and then everything should be working perfectly fine. Now, coming back to that third point of being stuck in a loop of failed upgrade attempts. This usually happens due to incompatible software, drivers, failing hardware, or just some sort of file or system corruption in the previous Windows installation. And I have very rarely managed to get a computer to upgrade successfully if I've encountered these issues. My honest recommendation would be to either select the keep nothing option during the upgrade process, or just do a complete clean install of Windows 11 then. If the hardware checks in FlyOOBE 11 passed, and your upgrade probability was very high, the chances of the clean install of Windows 11 succeeding will also be very high. You'll just need to remember to copy all of your important files to another drive first, so you have a backup of them, and since you'll be starting from scratch, you will need to install all of your software again. But at least this way, you will be running Windows 11 if you want to. Did you know that there's actually a whole bunch of tools out there for creating your own custom Windows ISOs? Some of these have nice interfaces, others are just command line based, and then you get those that create completely stripped down versions of Windows for you automatically. And did you also know that all of these tools basically use the same underlying methods to make changes to these Windows images, and that it's actually directly available in Windows? Well, today we're going to dive a little deeper on the subject. First, I'll explain how Windows image customization actually works, so you understand what's happening behind the scenes. Then, I'll show you the tools that make creating custom Windows ISOs really easy. And finally, I'll talk about community projects that have already done the work for you. Now, before we get started, I want to be clear that modifying Windows images can carry risks and potentially break Windows if you remove the wrong components. This video is for educational purposes, and I'm not telling you to use any specific software or tool. You should always test custom images in a virtual machine first and make sure you understand what you're doing. Also, this video is not a tutorial on how to use any of these tools. If you'd like me to create tutorials on any of the tools I mentioned in this video, let me know in the comments down below. So let's start with the first point: how Windows image customization actually works. Understanding this will help you make better decisions about which tools to use and what to expect from them. And don't worry, I'm going to keep this simple and practical. So every Windows ISO file contains something called a Windows image file. That's either install.wim or install.esd in the sources folder. This is basically a compressed version of the entire Windows installation. Windows comes with a built-in tool called DISM that can mount this image to a folder, kind of like extracting a zip file. Once you mount the image with DISM, you can literally browse through all the Windows files, delete stuff you don't want, add drivers, remove Windows features, and modify settings. When you're done, you can save the changes back to the image and then create a new ISO file. That's basically how all these Windows customization works under the hood. Now, there's another approach called answer files. Instead of changing the Windows image itself, you create an XML file that tells Windows how to configure itself during installation. This can skip setup screens, create user accounts, configure privacy settings, and even uninstall some of the software that's included in Windows. Now, as you can probably tell, doing all of this manually with command lines and XML files is pretty tedious. That's exactly why people in the community have created tools to make this process much easier. Which brings us to the second point: the tools that make creating custom Windows ISOs really easy. These tools basically give you a nice interface to do all the DISM and answer file stuff I just showed you, without having to remember complicated commands or write XML code. First up is NTLite, which is probably the most user-friendly option. It gives you a clean interface where you can load a Windows image, remove components you don't want, add drivers and updates, configure settings, and create answer files. Behind the scenes, it's using the DISM commands I explained earlier, but you don't have to worry about that. What I really like about NTLite is that it shows you exactly what each component does, so you know what's safe to remove. As we can see here, you can get rid of a ton of stuff in Windows. Now, the drawback is NTLite is a paid tool. Although it has a free version, you won't have access to the more advanced features. Next is MSMG Toolkit, which is completely free but uses a text-based menu system instead of a graphical interface like NTLite does. It's basically an organized collection of DISM commands that you can run through menu options. You can select your source, which is the Windows ISO file, and then you can integrate updates and drivers, remove components, and customize the Windows image with custom cursors, themes, and more. If you don't mind command line interfaces, this tool is incredibly powerful and supports the latest Windows versions. And then there's ET Optimizer, which is also completely free and primarily known as a Windows optimization tool. But it also has the ability to create custom ISOs with all its optimizations baked in. So you can create a Windows image that's already optimized for performance and privacy right from the start. Now, if you want to focus on the answer file approach, there's the Sneagen's Unattended generator. And this is a web-based tool that lets you configure Windows settings through a nice interface. And then it generates the XML answer file for you. You don't modify the Windows image at all, you just tell Windows how to set itself up. This is actually the service I used to create the base answer file for my project called UnattendedWinstall before I added my own customizations and optimizations to the XML file. Now, maybe you're thinking this still sounds like a lot of work. I just want a clean Windows installation without having to configure everything myself. Well, that's where the community projects come in. Which brings us to the third point, community projects that create customized versions of Windows. These are projects where developers have already done the customization work and created lightweight, optimized versions of Windows that you can just download and use. The trade-off is, though, that you're stuck with their choices. But if you just want a cleaner Windows experience, this might be perfect. What's great about these projects are that they're fully open source, so you can see exactly what's happening to the Windows image, if you understand how to read code. And even then, these days you can just ask AI to explain the code to you. Now first up is Tiny11, which is a stripped down version of Windows 11 that can run on older hardware with just 2 gigs of RAM. The developer uses the methods I explained earlier to remove tons of unnecessary components and create a really lightweight Windows experience. On top of this, they also provide the PowerShell scripts so you can see exactly what they removed. Then there's Microwin by Chris Titus, which is a part of his Windows utility tool. This creates a debloated Windows image, and it can even inject drivers from your current system to ensure hardware compatibility when you reinstall Windows. But it's more of an automated tool rather than a pre-made image. But I really think Microwin is one of the most stable custom Windows versions you'll get, and it's really easy to use. And then finally, there's my own project called UnattendedWinstall, which focuses on the answer file approach. Instead of directly modifying the Windows image, it's a pre-made answer file that automatically configures Windows during the installation. It skips the forced Microsoft account during the setup and lets you create a local account, configures privacy and registry settings, and it also uninstalls a bunch of the pre-installed apps that come with stock versions of Windows. So which of these approaches should you actually use? Well, that comes down to your personal preference. If you just want a lightweight version of Windows without having to do the customizations yourself, the community projects like Microwin, Tiny11, and UnattendedWinstall will be perfect for you. But if you want more control and you want to do the customizations yourself and you don't mind spending a little bit of money, then I think NTLite is the best option. Otherwise, use MSMG Toolkit or the ET Optimizer. Just make sure that you test your custom Windows ISO file in a virtual machine or a test computer first to ensure that it is stable and that you didn't accidentally remove some needed components from the Windows image. Today we're going to be having a look at a software called Wintoys, which is another program that basically helps you optimize Windows and customize Windows to some regard, and you can find it on the Microsoft Store. And the official description of this app is to experience Windows in a way to keep it fresh every day. It helps you set up, debloat, optimize, repair, and tweak your operating system in a simple, time-saving, and yet safe approach. And it helps you to maintain it while having everything you need in one place. And it also has quite good reviews. So we're going to go ahead and download it from the official Microsoft App Store here, which will download the Wintoys installer. But you can also download it from the Microsoft Store if you want. But I'm going to be using this Wintoys installer here. And then we're going to go ahead and let it download and install. And then it's also automatically going to launch on the system. So first off, we're going to see an hello message. It says that we can uninstall any app with this program, even apps that don't have an uninstall option in Windows. We're going to see if we can remove Microsoft Edge. It helps us boost our PC. It speeds up Windows and increases frame rate in certain games, keeps Windows clean and free up storage space, and it lets us personalize the desktop and learn cool new features. And then it also says that we need to create a system restore point before we make any changes to the device. So first off, on this home page here, we can see all of our system specs. It also gives us a performance score for our system. And then we can see some utilization here, like the processor, video card, memory, and the network bandwidth and all of that. If we go to the first tab here, which is apps, this is basically a list of apps that we can uninstall. Let's see if we can uninstall Microsoft Edge. No, we do not have the option to uninstall Microsoft Edge. So it doesn't look like it's true that we can remove the other apps that you aren't able to remove with the built-in uninstaller. But you can use this to uninstall apps from your system. If we go to services, this is basically giving us a list of all of the running services. And this is the same info that you'll be getting in Task Manager. If you click on the services tab down here, you can also see a list of services that's running if you change the status to running. Now I'm guessing you can also stop and start the services here, which is quite nice. And you can also filter the services by these different categories here. Next, let's go to performance and see what we can do here. So we can activate the ultimate performance power plan, which is useful for some people. I also have it activated. I do recommend that you use it, especially if you're using a desktop. And if you click on this settings here, it's going to open the power options in control panel. And you can see that I have ultimate performance enabled, and I also have these power settings here. You can also enable hardware accelerated GPU scheduling. I don't have that enabled. I'm just going to leave it disabled as well, but it allows the video card to allocate tasks more efficiently and reduces CPU latency. Then you have virtual based security, which basically uses memory to increase protection against vulnerabilities and malware or malicious exploits. If you do have performance issues, you can go ahead and disable that and see if the performance issues goes away. But generally, I do recommend keeping that enabled. Then startup apps, we can expand this and easily toggle startup apps. I'm just going to uncheck the Microsoft PC Manager. Then you have this option to relaunch apps, which automatically relaunches apps every time you sign back into Windows. I don't like doing that, so I'm going to leave that disabled. You can disable background apps. In Windows 10, you had this slider where you can just disable all of those apps, but you don't have that in Windows 11. Having it in this software here, I think is very cool because you can just toggle your background apps right here. Then activity history, I always keep that off, but you can basically just change this in Windows settings as well. You can change some Windows UI related settings. You can automatically adjust visual effects for best performance. Some people don't like doing this because it makes some stuff in Windows look bad, but it basically sets these visual effects in Windows. Then you can also toggle transparency effects here, which I do have enabled. Then we have some gaming settings. I do have game mode enabled, but all of these others are turned off, and you can set these according to your preferences. We've got search indexing and we've got delivery optimization, which I do recommend having switched off. And then you have the option here to offload some network functions from your CPU to the network adapter's onboard processor. This is disabled for me, so I'm not going to enable that, but that is an option if you want to use that to basically take some strain off your CPU. Next, if we go to the health tab here, what other options do we have? You can enable or disable fast startup and enable or disable hibernation. That is enabled for me by default, I see. So I'm just going to leave that enabled. You can enable drive optimization. Now, if we open the settings here, I'm pretty sure this is just the optimized drives window where it basically trims your SSDs. We've got this repair section, and this is pretty cool because you have these 3 commands all here next to each other. And this can really help repair a lot of issues you might have in Windows because it runs this DISM command, the SFC command, and check disk. And you need to select at least one tool before you can scan and repair your computer. But if you are having any sort of issues on your PC where stuff just isn't working properly, or your taskbar is broken, the start menu doesn't want to open, Windows Explorer isn't working properly, or your computer updated recently and things just isn't as it used to be, then I recommend checking all of these options here, and then you can click on scan or repair. I'm not going to be doing that in this video because it does take quite a long time, and you don't need to use Wintoys to run these commands. You can do it in a normal PowerShell window by typing out the commands yourself, but this is just a very user-friendly way of running those commands and getting your Windows repaired. So keep that in mind for the future. Now next, you can do a memory diagnostic. And this is going to use the Windows built-in memory diagnostic tool that I don't really recommend using. I've made another video on this channel showing you exactly how you can test your memory for errors, and you can check the channel for that guide. It's much better and more comprehensive than using the memory diagnostic tool in Windows. Now next, you have this cleanup option here. We can unpin all items from the taskbar. We can delete all junk files. We can clear the Microsoft Store cache. We can flush the DNS, and then we can also delete all system restore points to free up some space. Now this is going to come down to personal preference. You can decide what you want to do. I'm just going to delete all junk files, which will open this window here. And then we have some options here. I'm going to select all of them, which will delete temp files, Windows updates, prefetch, And we can also delete the browser cache, and I'll go ahead and click on delete, and then you'll see these junk files were deleted. Now, I also made another video checking out the Microsoft PC Manager, which basically does the same thing as this. And that's the only option I'm going to be using in this cleanup section here. For the system updates, you can configure how updates work. Now, this installation that I have already just downloaded and installs security updates, but this is also really easy just to change your Windows update schedule from the defaults to security. And I see you also have the option of just checking for updates without installing them by setting this to manually. And you can completely disable Windows updates. Now, obviously, disabling Windows updates will leave you vulnerable to some threats because you don't have the latest updates. So I don't really recommend doing that, but you do have the option of choosing any one of these if you want to have more control over your Windows updates. And in my opinion, this is a really cool feature, having control over your Windows updates like this. Then you have the option to automatically download and install app updates. I don't actually want that enabled, so I'm going to disable that. Then you have this sleeping pill option where it can detect and stop scheduled tasks from randomly waking up your device from sleep. I don't really have any option there, so I'm just going to leave that. You can restart your graphics driver if it has weird issues. I'm thinking it's best just to restart your entire computer in that case, but if you do constantly have weird issues like freezing or flickering, I recommend just testing your graphics card to see if it might be faulty. I have another video on this channel showing you how you can test your graphics card and get the latest graphics driver installed and all of that, and I recommend checking out the channel for that video, and I might even link it down in the description of this video, because you really shouldn't be having constant issues like freezing or flickering. That just means something is wrong on your computer, and especially with your graphics card. And then lastly, you have the option here to rebuild the cache of your icons or thumbnails if they're blank, blurry, or corrupted. I don't have that issue, so let's just go ahead and check out the tweaks section, which is the last section here. So we've got this desktop section where we can change desktop related settings. So for example, we can put this PC icon on the desktop, and you'll just have to right click and then refresh, and then you'll have this PC icon on the desktop. So this is pretty cool. You can add any one of these icons to your desktop really easily. Then you also have the option of showing the shortcut arrow. I have that enabled by default, which is the default in Windows, but you can disable that if you want. You can enable drop shadows for icon labels. You can enable this show desktop button here, which you normally have at your taskbar. I have StartAllBack installed on my computer, so it already replaces the shell. We've got this wallpaper quality setting, which is set to 85. I'm going to set that to 100, and it says we need to reapply the wallpaper after a device restart. So I'm not going to be doing that in this video now. You also have the option of enabling the classic context menu, which is the classic right-click menu in Windows. Now, like I mentioned, I'm using StartAllBack, but for a right-click menu replacement, I recommend using Shell by Nullsoft. And I already have a video on that, and I'll link the playlist of all of the shell replacement videos I made in the description of this video. So you can go ahead and check those out, because there really are a lot of great free programs out there that you can use to customize Windows 11 and to make it a lot better. So I recommend going ahead and checking out that playlist. But let's have a look at some of the other options here. For the start menu, we can toggle all of these settings here, which is disabled for me by default anyway. Then for the File Explorer settings, we also have some different options that we can choose from here. Something I always like having enabled is to show file extensions. This is really beneficial to see what file types you have and what you're working with. You can toggle showing hidden files here, and then you also have a whole bunch of other options. Another one is opening your File Explorer to this PC, home or downloads. Now, I think this PC is the best, and I'll leave that selected. Lastly, we have the privacy settings here. Now, I think this is really cool because you have access to all of these privacy settings under one tab here, and that's something in Windows that I absolutely despise, is all of this telemetry and all of these things that you can see here, and that's why it's disabled by default for me. In the UnattendedWinstall answer files that I use to install Windows, I basically try and switch all of these things off as well. Now, unfortunately, sometimes when you do use Microsoft apps, they don't work as intended because a lot of these things are disabled, and Microsoft needs those as dependencies for those programs to function properly. But for what I use my computer for, these settings work for me. Then we have an ads option here, which basically gives us a whole bunch of sliders that we can turn off so we don't get tailored experiences. It doesn't track our ad ID, doesn't suggest notifications, and this is all disabled by default for me as well. And I really recommend that if you have these things turned on, if you download Wintoys and you see that you have these things turned on, I really recommend turning off all of these privacy settings here and also disabling all of these ad settings. And if you do find that something is broken, you can always just enable it again in this app here, but this will make a huge difference in the data that gets sent to Microsoft about your usage patterns and also the ads that you see in Windows. So these two drop-down menus here, the privacy and the ads, I think is one of the best features that is inside of Wintoys, because it gives you easy access to all of these things on one page without you having to go into the Windows settings and then going to privacy and security and going through each one of these tabs to turn off those options. So I think those two are really great features, and I might even use this app on other installs of Windows to get all of these things turned off easily. And lastly, we have system related settings like mouse acceleration and clipboard history, and you can snip with the print screen key. You can enable or disable user account control here, and then you also have this mode here that you can enable where you'll get this desktop shortcut, and if you open that, it's basically going to give you a list of every single control panel link that you have in Windows. Now, Microsoft announced that they're going to be retiring the control panel completely from Windows, and we'll see how that goes, and we'll see if this actually still works. I don't see how they can retire it completely. Maybe in the next version of Windows, but we'll see. And then the very last setting here in tweaks is you can extract the Spotlight images if you are using Windows Spotlight and you see those desktop wallpapers that Microsoft basically shows as ads in Windows. If you like one of those images, you can extract those images to a folder, and you'll just have to choose a folder where you want to save it, and then you can extract those images if you want to download them. If we go to the settings tab here, we also have a theme we can choose, the backdrop. Then you can choose where this app must open to the home page, apps, services, or any one of these tabs. You can create a shortcut for this app, and then error reporting is enabled by default, so it can help the developer to identify issues. So I think Wintoys is a great app. Like I said before, to me, the most important thing and the thing I like the most is having access to the privacy settings and the ads all on one page, so I can just disable all of these settings here without having to go into Windows and manually going to every setting to find it and disable it. Today we're taking a look at Microsoft PowerToys, which is a must-have app for every Windows user. Well, it depends on what you use your computer for, but if you're a Power user, you definitely need Microsoft PowerToys. So if you've never heard of this before, it's a collection of utilities that's developed by Microsoft, and basically the main focus of it is for Windows users to experience greater productivity. So you can basically do things faster on your computer. Now, it's got a bunch of utilities, and in this video I'm not going to be going through every single one, but I am going to be showing you what I use Microsoft PowerToys for, and maybe you can get some sort of value out of that as well. So first off, you can download this from the official Microsoft Store page, and it's also an open source project available on GitHub, but I'm going to download it from the Microsoft Store page here. So that download button is just going to download the PowerToys installer. So I'm just going to click on that to run it, and then on your computer you'll be able to install it, but I've already got it installed, as you can see. So once you've got it installed and it's open, you're going to find it in your system tray. Because I'm using StartAllBack, I've got the system tray up here with my taskbar, and if you click on the PowerToys menu up there, you're going to find some quick access tools, and if you click on more, you can find a quick toggle for each of these tools. And if you go back and you click on the settings app, that's going to open the main PowerToys interface. So if I just make this a little bit larger, you can see the dashboard, which shows you all of your utilities that you've enabled with the disabled modules here at the bottom. You've got some general settings like checking for updates, if you want this to be run as administrator, some appearance settings and that type of thing. And then you've got the actual tools, which are grouped in different categories. But like I said, I'm not going to be going through each and every tool. I'm just going to highlight those that I use on a day-to-day basis. So the first one being PowerToys Run. So what PowerToys Run does is it basically gives you a run box if you use the activation shortcut. And if you're familiar with other operating system, then this looks quite familiar because you can now launch apps using PowerToys Run. So you can search for anything. If I want to open Steam, for example, and I do a search for Steam, then I can open the Steam application by just doing a search for it here. The other thing you can do with this is you can use this as a calculator. So if I just go and type 10 plus 10, it's going to show me the answer for 10 plus 10. And if I click on this answer here, it's going to copy the number to the clipboard. So if I've copied that and I just open a new text document, if I open that and then paste, it's going to paste the answer. So in the past, I've always been used to using the built-in calculator in Windows, but since I've started using PowerToys, whenever I want to do a quick calculation, I just open the run box and then do that calculation, and then I can just easily copy the answer to the clipboard as well. Now, if I clear this, you can see that there is some plugin keywords as well. So you can use PowerToys Run for a bunch of different things as well, and you can look at the documentation for that. But since I've started using PowerToys Run, I've found that I do not use the start menu in Windows that much anymore, because whenever I'm thinking of what I want to do or what app I want to launch, I just open PowerToys Run, search for the app that I want to open, then press enter, and that's going to launch the app. And if you want to close this without launching an application or anything, then you can just press escape, and that's going to close PowerToys Run. So PowerToys Run is definitely one of the tools that I use the most on a day-to-day basis in this suite of utilities. And if you're not happy with this activation shortcut, you can just click on the edit icon there, and then you can create your own keyboard shortcut by just pressing a combination of keys that you want to use to open PowerToys Run. The next tool that I also use a lot, it's called Always on Top. And what this does is it puts a window on top of other windows, so you'll always see what's inside of it. So this might seem like a small thing, but it's actually very useful once you know how to use it. So as an example, if I've got this text document window here and I want that to always be on top, I can just select it, then press the keyboard shortcut, which is Windows key Control and T, and it's going to get this border around it. And I can still move this window, but if I click on the PowerToys Run window, you see that it doesn't display above the pinned window here. This is going to stay on top of any other windows. And I found this to be very useful when I've only got one screen that I'm using and I need to look at one document or window and type or work in another window that I have pinned here. So this is very useful. And if you close that window, it's obviously not going to be pinned anymore, but that's also one of the most useful modules in PowerToys. The next one is Fancy Zones. So Fancy Zones is almost like a tiling window manager. It just gives you some more control over how you can use the space on your screen. So the first thing that you're going to do here is to launch the layout editor. So if I open that, now I can choose the monitor that I'm working on. This is my main monitor, which I'm screen recording right now. So here we've got some templates that we want to use when we activate Fancy Zones. So you've got some presets here, but as an example, let's create a new layout and I'm going to just call it custom layout 1. We'll keep it on grid and then I'm going to create that. So as an example, let's say that I wanted to split zone 3 here. If I just go ahead and click, it's going to split it and I can then use these sliders to make that window bigger or smaller. Let's just basically make it the same size and let's just go ahead and save this and then choose our custom layout 1 as the layout that we want to use when we use Fancy Zones. So I'm going to select that and then just exit out of the editor here. So now the way that you use this is you'll see that you need to hold down the left shift key to activate zones while dragging a window. If I hold down left shift and then click and drag this window, these Fancy Zones appear and I can put this inside of one of these windows. So as an example, let's move this to the first window, then it's going to stay there. Let's move my VMware workstation to one of these windows down here. And then let's also put some other windows here. Let me just open to File Explorers, hold down left shift, and then click and drag this window and place that inside of that as well. Now I've got this layout that I created and I can see all of these windows and I can work inside each one of them at the same time and just have access to a whole bunch of different information on the same screen. And then once I want to use one of these full screen again, I can just maximize it and it's going to take all of the space on the computer. So you can create your own layouts that's going to work for you. And like I said, this is basically like a tiling window manager, but it's not. It basically makes it a little bit easier for you to create your own layouts here and then also switch between these layouts depending on what you want to do. Then the next module I also use a lot is the color picker. So that's under system tools. And if we go to color picker, you can see that it is enabled and it's also got an activation shortcut that you can use here. But most of the time I forget the shortcut and all of these shortcuts, to be honest with you. What I normally just do is click on the PowerToys icon up there, and then select the color picker, which launches it. And then you can see on my mouse cursor, wherever I have my mouse cursor, it shows me the color and then also the hex code or the color code for that color. So as an example, let's go to something else on the screen, like that orange inside of the PowerToys window. If I now just click on that color, then it gives me the color that I just selected with the hex code, the RGB code and HSL. And you can now just easily copy this color and then use it in your designs. For example, when I'm creating thumbnails, or I need a specific color in video editing, or even when I'm developing apps or scripts, then this is very useful. And from this window here, you can also just click on pick again, and then you can pick the next color, copy that to the clipboard, and then you can use it in your designs. The next utility is the text extractor. The text extractor does exactly what it says in the name. It copies text from anywhere on the screen. So this can be a PDF file, this can be an image. I normally always just click on the icon in the system tray, then select the text extractor, and it basically opens the same interface as a snipping tool. Then you can just go and select the text that you want to copy. So for example, you can see that it's recommended to use the snipping tool instead of the text extractor module. It seems to be built into the snipping tool. But if I let go of the mouse and I select this text, it's going to be automatically copied to the clipboard. So if I now open a text document and I press Ctrl and V to paste, you can see that I have the text that I just copied from the screen in this notepad file here. And this is actually quite useful even if you're not just extracting one sentence at a time. For example, I'm pretty sure if I take a screenshot of this whole screen here and then also paste that, it is going to extract most of the text that I had on the screen here, but obviously it won't be formatted exactly like you see here. It's just going to be plain text exactly like you can see in this notepad file here. But that's also very useful, especially if you have an image that has text that you obviously can't copy. So those 5 modules are definitely the ones that I use the most, I would say almost on a day-to-day basis. But I do want to give some honorable mentions to the following ones, and that's going to be PowerToys Awake, which basically just keeps your PC awake and on demand. And then the very last one is if we go to File Management, you've got an image resizer. And if you want to resize images and make them smaller or larger, can do that with the image resizer, and I'll show you how to do that quickly. So let's just say, for example, that we've got these 2 blue gradient images here. I can select both of them or only one of them, but if they're selected and I right click on them and I then go to resize with image resizer, if I click on that option, it's going to prompt me, how do I want to resize them? Do I want to make them smaller, medium, large, or for a phone? Or you can even enter custom dimensions. For this example, let's just make it small. Then you've also got some other options here, which I normally just leave on the default. And then if you click on resize, it's going to keep the originals, and then it's going to give you the resized images as well. Today, we're taking a look at UniGetUI, which honestly is one of the best free and open source apps you can get on Windows. And what it does is it's a graphical interface for your package managers. So package managers are things like Winget, Scoop, Chocolatey, Pip, npm, .NET Tool, and PowerShell Gallery, which basically uses the command line to install apps on your computer. Now, UniGetUI used to be called WinGetUI, and I have made videos on this software previously when it was still called WinGetUI, but in this video, I want to go ahead and take you through the download and installation, and then give you a quick overview and walkthrough of how you can use the software to basically maintain all of the other apps and software that you have installed on your computer and to keep it up to date without even thinking about it really. So to start off, you just have to note that you do need Windows 10 64-bit or Windows 11, which will also be 64-bit. And then the developer says that Windows Server 2022 and 2025 should work, but they are not officially supported. So as of the time of recording this video, just make sure that you have Windows 10 or Windows 11 and that you have that version number or higher for Windows 10. So to download it, you can get it from the website here, and there's a few different download options that you can choose from here. I'll have his official website linked in my written guide as well, file that I'll have on my website, and you can find a link to that in the description of this video. But we're going to go ahead and choose the direct download here. So I'll click on that, which will then download the UniGet installer. Once it's done, just click on it to open it. I'm going to install this for all users. Then just select the language, and this should just be the same as any other setup wizard. You basically just go ahead and click on next, choose an install location. Then you can choose to perform a portable installation. I'm going to choose to perform a regular installation, and I suggest that you do the same and that you leave all of these options selected. You can click on next and then click on install, and it's going to start installing UniGetUI. And then once it's finished, we'll just go ahead and launch it as well. And then we can start having a look at UniGetUI. So this is going to be the main interface that you see here, where you can basically discover packages, which means you can search for software. So you can search for different apps that's available through Winget or Chocolatey, or any of those other package managers that we saw here before. These ones here that's mentioned on the website. So for example, let's search for WhatsApp. It might take some time to complete the search, but once it's done, you'll have a few results to choose from. So for example, here we have WhatsApp that we can download from the MS store. So this is going to download it through Winget. So you can see the source that it's going to use to download the app that you selected. So just as an example, let's install WhatsApp in this video here. So I'm going to select that to install it with the Microsoft Store or using Winget. And once it's selected, I'm just going to click on install selected packages. And you can see the status down here. So it's basically starting the WhatsApp installation. You can see it's busy installing, and it says that WhatsApp was installed successfully. So if we go and have a look at that and just do a search for WhatsApp, now I have WhatsApp on my computer. So that's just an example of how you can download and install an app using UniGetUI. But where the real power comes in is the software updates tab here. So UniGetUI is going to scan your computer for all the software that's installed on it. And it's also going to give you updates for that software if it's available through these package managers here. So as you can see, it's found a whole bunch of software updates, 22 to be exact. And now I have a few different options that I can choose from what I want to do with these apps here. So I can select all of these apps and then update all of the selected packages, or I can choose to ignore the selected packages. And then if you've ignored certain packages, you can then manage the ignored updates with this tab here. So I'm not going to update all of these apps in the video. Let's just use one as an example. I'm just going to update 7-zip. I'm going to click on update selected packages, and it's basically going to do the same thing that was done with WhatsApp. It's just going to download and install the latest update to the computer. And now you can see that 7-zip was updated successfully and it's disappeared from this list here. So UniGetUI is really useful for checking for outdated software and then giving you the next version that's available. So for all of these apps here, you can see it gives me the current version that I have and then the new version that's available. So you can see how out of date the app is, and then you can choose if you want to update the app. So for example, let's say that I don't want to update Discord. I can select Discord and then ignore selected packages. So in the future, it shouldn't prompt me to update Discord anymore, even if there's a newer version available than the one that was currently available when I ignored it. So if I wanted to undo that, I can just go to manage ignored updates, and I can see that I ignored Discord. And if I just click on the trash can icon there, it should then put it back on the list here. And I'm guessing we just have to refresh this page and then Discord should appear again. So there we go. Discord appears on the list of packages that has software updates available. So the software updates here is one of the most useful features in UniGetUI because it really just helps you to see all of the installed apps on your computer that's out of date, and you can just select all of them or just the ones that you want to update and update them without any issue. Now, if we go to the installed packages tab here, this is where we can basically uninstall certain packages or programs from the computer. So for example, I'm just going to select PC Manager and I'm also going to select WhatsApp, and then I'm going to uninstall it. I'll get this prompt prompting me if I'm sure I want to do that. Just going to click on yes. And now it's going to queue both of those for uninstallation and then uninstall it from the computer. So now I won't have those apps installed on the computer anymore. If we go to the package bundles tab here, this is where you can basically create a bundle of packages where you can save the bundle and then import the bundle on another computer or on your computer once you've reinstalled Windows, which will make it much easier for you to just get a whole bunch of apps installed quickly and efficiently without having to go and search for every one of those apps individually. So just to give you a quick rundown of how the package bundles work, if you go to your installed packages, for example, let's just say as an example that I want to make a bundle of all of the packages that I have installed on my system. I'm just going to select all of them here, and then I'll need to click on the ellipsis menu here so I can get to the add selection to bundle option. If you have the application full screen, you should just have the add selection to bundle option right there. But I'm using it in a windowed mode now. So you can just select that and then click add selection to bundle. And then if you go to package bundles, you'll have all of the apps that you just added right here. Now, if there's something you want to add that's not part of this list, so let's, for example, just use WhatsApp again, because that's something I uninstalled previously. So let's go to discover packages then. Then we're going to search for WhatsApp once again. We're going to find WhatsApp. I'm going to select it, and then I'll click on add selection to bundle, and it's going to add WhatsApp to the list of apps that I have in the bundle here, and we can see it right there. So what I can do now is I can save this bundle as a specific file, and I'm just going to save this file as apps bundle. You can also choose a different file type here. I'm just going to leave the default selected and then click on save, and that's going to save this apps bundle file to my desktop. So I can basically now remove all of these selections from the bundle. And let's say as an example, I just formatted and reinstalled Windows completely and I have no apps on the system. I can now basically just go ahead and download and install UniGetUI. Then I can just go ahead and click on open existing bundle. I can select this apps bundle file, and I'll have all of the packages or apps that I had installed previously ready to go for me to just select all of them and then click on install selection, which will install all of those apps that I usually use or that I had on my system before, without having to go to each website individually and going and downloading each installation file separately. I can now just install all of those apps using UniGetUI, provided that it does have a source to install from. So for example, I'll be able to install 7-zip because it can be installed from Winget, but I can't install the AMD chipset software because it doesn't have a source to download that file. So that's something I'll have to go and download and install manually. And you can easily tell which of these can't be installed by looking at the source, and it's also grayed out. So you can basically also deselect these packages before saving your bundle file, so you don't even have them included. But I would just save the bundle file with all of the apps that I had on the system previously, because now I can see which things I still need to go and download and install manually by looking at this list here. And it's just going to help me make sure that I don't miss any of the software that I was using on my previous Windows installation. So this is going to help you and save you a lot of time if you're doing fresh installs of Windows and setting it up on different computers on a regular basis. Another thing I'd like to show you is that you can also share packages. So I've gotten a lot of YouTube comments from people saying that, for example, if they do a search for the Xbox app on the Discover Packages tab, they can't get the Xbox app for Windows to show up. For example, there is the Xbox app that I can download from the Microsoft Store. What you'll need to do is you need to select the app, you need to have it highlighted, and then click on the share button, which is going to give you a share link. So you can share it using one of these apps here, or you can generate a QR code, or you can just copy the code. And then if I paste that into the browser, it's going to take us to the Marty Clement website and show us the specific package that we just shared with the package ID, and it's going to give us a direct link to view the app in UniGetUI. So if I click on that, it's going to open UniGetUI, and then it's going to load the Xbox app because that's what I just shared here. And it basically does a search for the app ID, and it's now loaded the Xbox app, and I can choose to install it as well, but it also shows it here in the list of discovered packages. So if there's a specific app you're searching for and you know for a fact that it is available on the Microsoft Store or on Scoop or Chocolatey, but you just can't find it in your UniGetUI app, ask a friend or use a different computer and see if you can find it that way, and then just share it to yourself using this share option inside of UniGetUI. We're going to go ahead and move on to settings, and you obviously have a whole bunch of general preferences and stuff that you can set according to your liking. But something that I want to show you here is if you go to the updates preferences here, you can select this option to install all available updates automatically. So if you just want to install UniGetUI and basically forget about it and let it manage all of your updates for you, and you don't want to have to go to the software updates tab every few days and then update the selected packages manually, you can just select this option to install all available updates automatically. And then if you do that, you probably also want to go to the startup options tab here, where you can then manage the UniGetUI auto start behavior, and you can open the settings app on your computer and you'll get UniGetUI here, and then just make sure that it is toggled on. And then you can also enable both of these options here, so it can update the package indexes, and then it also enables the Scoop package manager cleanup on launch. Now you also have some other options here, like you can back up your installed packages. You can periodically perform a backup of all your installed packages, and you can see a detailed breakdown of what will happen if you select that option here. You also have some admin settings here, and then for the package managers, you can select which package manager you want to use. If there's any of these package managers here that you don't want to use, you can always just deselect those and you won't get the results for those anymore. Generally, I just recommend leaving all of this on, but if you're a more advanced user, you can deselect some of these package managers, but that's completely up to you. You generally have to use Winget if you're downloading Microsoft Store apps, and then Scoop and Chocolatey are also one of the most well-known package managers that you can use on Windows. I've been using Windows 11 as my main operating system for about a month now, and I've been using my UnattendedWinstall version of Windows 11. And although I find it much better to use Windows 11 without all of the bloatware and unnecessary stuff running in the background, there are still some things I don't like about Windows 11, and that is the taskbar, start menu, and right-click menu. Now the good news is there are a lot of programs that you can use to replace the shell in Windows 11, and that's what the next few videos are going to be about on my channel. If you want to check out the other videos, go ahead and look at the description of this video, and I'll have all of those videos linked in a playlist that you can go ahead and watch. And the software that we're going to be having a look at today is called Windhawk. And Windhawk is basically like a modding interface where you have a collection of customizations that you can add to Windows and some programs. So we're going to be downloading it, and I'll show you how to use it in this video. To download it, you can just visit this webpage here and then click on download. And I'll obviously have this linked in the description of the video as well. It'll download the file. If you do get any prompts, just click on keep, so you can keep that file there. Then click on open file, and that's going to launch the Windhawk installer. You have a few options here. You can do a standard installation, which will install Windhawk for all users on the computer, or you can extract a portable version of Windhawk. And in that case, all the configuration data will be stored in the application folder, and no information is going to be written to the registry of the computer. Now for this video, I'm just going to use the standard installation method. If you do get any prompts, just click on yes. I'm going to leave the default selected here, but you can also change that if you want. Then just click on next, and then it's going to start installing and downloading any necessary dependencies that's needed for it to run. Then once it's finished, you can run Windhawk, and I'm just going to click on finish, and then it should open automatically. So this is what the interface looks like. You can click on the Explore tab up here to browse for more mods. And here you can also see the mods are basically listed from the most popular to the least popular, or with the most amount of users to the least amount of users. There's a few of these mods that I want to show you in this video specifically, because we're having a look at replacing the taskbar and start menu on Windows 11. So let's start with the taskbar height and icon size mod. You can click on the details of this mod, and then you can click on install. These mods are all open source, and you can see that it's verified by this GitHub user here. So I'm just going to click on install here, and it's then going to install that mod. So once it's installed, you can go to the settings tab here inside of Windhawk, and then you have control over the settings. What this specific mod allows us to do is to change the icon size, the taskbar height, and the taskbar button width. If we go to the details tab here, you can see this is basically what the taskbar looks like if you have these settings here, like it's listed below each of these screenshots that they have here. But for this example, let's change it to the small taskbar size, which is an icon size of 16 and a taskbar height of 34. So the icon size was 16 and the taskbar height was 34. I'm going to leave the taskbar button width on 44, but I'm guessing we're going to change that afterwards as well. If I click on Save Settings, you'll see that the taskbar has changed now, and it's a lot smaller compared to the default Windows 11 taskbar. If we change the taskbar button width, if I change that to 20, for example, and save the settings, you'll see that Explorer needs to be restarted. So you'll need to click on yes for those changes to take effect. But now the buttons are much closer to each other. So this is a small taskbar with small taskbar buttons. Basically, you just have these 3 settings that you can set and customize the taskbar size and icons. Now, if you want to undo this, you can click on the disable button here. And as you can see, it's basically bugged out now, but that's because we need to restart File Explorer. And to do that, I'm just going to open the Task Manager and then find the Windows Explorer process on here and then restart the task. And then you'll see the Windows 11 taskbar is now back to default. If you tested out the mod and you don't want to use it, you can just disable it, or you can completely remove it from Windhawk. And I'm going to remove this mod from Windhawk just as an example to show you. And then we can go back and explore the other mods again. So one of the other popular mods here is the taskbar volume control. So if you click on the details and we install this mod here, what this allows you to do is you can basically just hover your mouse over the taskbar and then use your scroll wheel to scroll up or down, and that's going to change the volume of Windows. So that's a nice quality of life thing to have in Windows, and this works wherever you have the mouse on the taskbar. You can even have it over an icon and then change the volume without having to click on the flyout menu here and then change the volume here. You'll see if I disable the mod and then hover my mouse over the sound icon here and move the scroll wheel up and down, you can see that the volume is changing, and that's a default feature in Windows 11, but the mouse cursor has to be over the sound icon like I have it now. It won't work if you just hover it over the taskbar, but that's what this mod is for here. You can just hover it over the taskbar and then scroll up or down to change system volume. I'll leave that installed for now. Then the next thing we can have a look at here is the Windows 11 Start Menu Styler. So let's go ahead and install that. Now, as you can see, we should also check out the Windows 11 Taskbar Styler and the Windows 11 Notification Center Styler, which you can use with this mod here. But basically, this mod allows you to add themes to the Windows 11 Start menu. So you have the No Recommended section. Basically, this removes the recommended section. So if you didn't know, it's really hard to get rid of this recommended section here. You can't actually get rid of it completely using the stock Windows 11. If you go to the personalization settings and you go to the Start button, you can basically turn off these settings here, and then you'll see that it just says the recommended section has been turned off, but it still takes up all of the space on the Start menu here, and you can't get rid of it. So as an example, if we go to Settings and we select the No Recommended section theme and we click on Save Settings and I open the Start menu now, the recommended setting is completely gone. And judging by the screenshot here, you can see that you can fill up the entire Start menu with pinned icons if you want to pin all of your apps to the Start menu. Now you also have some other options here, like a side-by-side Start menu. And instead of looking at all of these screenshots here, let me actually show you what each of them looks like. So I'm just going to change the theme to the side-by-side theme and then save the settings again. Now if we open that, we have the pinned icons here. We have the recommended section, which has been turned off. And then we have this all apps list here, which isn't possible in the stock Windows 11. Then there's also a side-by-side 2 setting where it basically has the all apps list here on the left and then the pinned apps on the right, but you still have the recommended section here, which isn't removed in these themes here. Taking a look at the other themes, we have a side-by-side minimal. So let's go ahead and save that. And this actually represents Windows 10 a lot better, where you have all of the apps here on the left and you only have the pinned icons here on the right with no recommended section. In my opinion, so far, this is the best Start menu that we've looked at now. If we have a look at some of the other themes, like the translucent Start menu, we can see that the Start menu now has a translucent effect. There's also no recommended section, which is really good. And you can also go to all apps. So this is a nice option for those people who want to have a translucent Start menu. If we go back to the other themes, we've got a Fluent to Inspired. If we go ahead and save those settings, this is like a fluent theme, which is a lot like the Windows 11 stock start menu, but again, we don't have the recommended section, which is really good. Another theme that we have at the time of this recording is the Windows 10 theme, and this actually looks quite good as well, with a bunch of pinned apps, and you can also unpin these apps from the start menu and pin your own apps to the start menu. Another theme is the Windows 11 Metro 10. This also looks like Windows 10 inspired menu with pinned apps and then the recommended section. I've got to be honest with you, the one I liked the most is the side-by-side minimal start menu, which is this one here. If there's a theme that has the side-by-side minimal start menu with the translucent theme, I think that's what I would be using if I were using Windhawk as my main shell replacement for Windows. But I actually use another program that I'll be discussing in a future video, so keep an eye out for that. But that's it for the Windows 11 Start Menu Styler. So I'm going to leave that enabled, but let's also have a look at the Taskbar Styler and the Notification Styler mods. We have the Windows 11 Taskbar Styler, and here we have a collection of themes like the Windows XP theme, a Bubbles theme, a translucent theme. Now, judging by these screenshots, I won't actually be using any one of these themes here. Maybe we can check out the translucent taskbar just as an example. And I'm just going to install this mod just so we can see what it looks like. So if we go to the settings tab and we select a theme, let's just look at the translucent taskbar. And I'm guessing it's going to be best if you use the translucent theme for the start menu with the translucent taskbar, so then everything has this translucent look to it. I'm just going to leave it on the minimal start menu, and then I'm also going to remove the taskbar theme. This is all personal preference. If there's one of these themes that you think you might like, then go ahead and try out Windhawk for yourself. I mean, we can even try out the Windows XP taskbar theme. Now, this aims to recreate the Windows XP taskbar, but it's not the same as Retrobar. Retrobar does a better job of that, in my opinion, and you can go ahead and have a look at that video if that's something you're interested in. But for now, I'm just going to remove this taskbar styler mod. Now, you also have a taskbar clock mod, a taskbar labels mod, and a whole bunch of others. Then you can add this mod where you can use your middle mouse button to close an item on the taskbar, which is quite handy to have. As you can see, there are a ton of customizations that you can do here. You can also have the classic Explorer navigation bar. And this is also something we covered in a previous video with Explorer Patcher, where you can change this command ribbon here to the Windows 10 Classic ribbon, and that's something I like having, so I'll install that mod. So if we go to settings and we change it to the Classic ribbon, then we have the Classic Windows 10 command ribbon. So that's something I like having in Windows 11, so I'm going to leave that enabled. And then another thing we can have a look at is the Windows 11 Notification Center styler. And basically this allows you to add the translucent theme to the notification pane. So I'm not going to be looking at that in this video, but if you want to use the translucent taskbar and start menu, then you can also add that. So everything has that translucent look. Now, like I said before, Windhawk has a lot of different mods that you can add to Windows, and going through every single one of them in this video is just going to take way too long, and I'm not going to do that. But I've had a look at what I wanted to have a look at, and that is the start menu styler, which gave me this start menu right here, and then also the taskbar height and icon size. I think I'll enable that as well and just install it again, because I'd like the taskbar to be a little bit smaller, so I can maybe change this to 20. I'm just going to use these settings here, then restart File Explorer. So I like this taskbar and start menu change. And then the other thing that I also like is the File Explorer change, where I have the Windows 10 command ribbon here. The only other thing that I would still change here is to align the start menu to the left of the screen, and then also disable the widgets so I don't have that. And that'll leave me with Windows 11 looking like this, with a start menu that in my opinion is much better than the stock Windows 11 start menu. Now, with regards to Windhawk, if you click on the home button, you can see all of the mods that you have installed here, and you can easily enable or disable any mods that you've installed here. Some of the changes will be immediate, and the other changes you'll have to restart the Windows Explorer process for that to take effect. But basically you'll have the stock Windows 11 options back after doing that. But if you wanted to enable any of these mods again, you can just do that by clicking on these sliders here, and it'll bring back the changes that you made earlier. And Windhawk will run automatically every time you launch your computer. You won't have to come and enable these settings every single time you launch Windows. Windhawk will just be running in the background. And if we have a look at the task manager here, it doesn't use a lot of resources at all because it basically just overrides the shell with a bunch of registry entries and some other stuff. But right now in total, it's not even using 3 megs of RAM. So it really shouldn't give you any performance issues in Windows. So it is a very good option to use in Windows 11 if you want to change the taskbar, start menu, or any of those other hundreds of tweaks that you can get by exploring these mods inside of Windhawk here. Now, like I showed you before, one of the methods to remove these options here is by clicking on remove, so you can remove the mods. But if you want to install Windhawk altogether, you can do that by going to the installed apps on your computer, and you'll find Windhawk as one of the installed programs, and you can just go ahead and uninstall it from your computer. And then you'll also have the option of removing the program settings, which you'll want to do if you don't want to use the mods anymore. You have to remember that the mods won't work if you don't have Windhawk installed anyways. So you can just remove all of those settings as well if you don't plan on reinstalling Windhawk again on the same computer. And then you'll have Windows 11 back to the standard settings. If I have a look at the File Explorer, you can see that the Windows 11 command ribbon has also been restored. In this video, I'm going to be showing you a paid software that you can use, which I think is overall the best shell replacement that you can get for Windows 11. And although it is a paid app, it's not expensive at all. And I'm going to be taking you through an entire walkthrough in this video. So the program I'm referring to is called StartAllBack, and it's what I use on both of my computers that's running Windows 11 since I've switched to Windows 11, because I just couldn't use the stock Windows 11 taskbar and start menu. So let's start by downloading StartAllBack, and you can get it from this web page, and then just click on download, and then you can click on open file so you can run the setup. And then you'll have to go through the setup wizard. So you can either install it for the current user that you're logged into, or you can install it for all users on the computer. I'm just going to install it for all of the users on the computer and then accept this user account control prompt. And then you'll have to go through the StartAllBack configuration. So let's go through each of these. If we select Proper 11, which is the default, you'll have this rounded start menu here. And if you click on these flyouts here in the system tray, you're going to have the Windows 11 menus. Also, if you open the File Explorer, you'll still have the Windows 11 command ribbon up here. If you select Kinda 10, then it changes the taskbar to the Windows 10 version. And then again, if you click on these flyouts here, it's going to open the Windows 10 menus for some of these items here. You can see the notifications didn't change, but the others have changed. And then if we click on the Start button, we have a classic start menu, but with sharp edges. It's not rounded like the Proper 11 version is. And then if we use the Remastered 7, you can see that you have the Windows 7 Start button with a start menu that resembles the look of Windows 7. And then if you click on these flyouts here, you'll have the Windows 7 flyouts for these items here in the system tray. Now, the way I have it set up on my computer is to use the Proper 11 version, but then to go and set some of these settings manually to my preference that I like to use. First off, you can go to the Start menu tab here, and then you can choose if you want to use this classic start menu. So if I switch that off, you'll see it's going to open the Windows 11 start menu. I don't like this start menu at all, so I'll use the classic start menu. And this is basically the classic shell or open shell start menu, but the StartAllBack developer, he made his own themes and changes to these start menus here. So you can change the visual style to the default. You can change it to plain 8, which is that menu, or to Windows 7, which is the other one I showed you earlier. I'll just leave that on the default. And then you can change the icon size to small icons, medium icons, or large icons. I changed this to small icons. Then for the all programs list, you can use large icons. You can display it as a flyout menu like in Windows XP. So if you click on all programs, it's going to open this menu here. If you deselect that checkbox there, then it's going to open the all programs list there. I like to have it set that way. And then for the rest of these settings here, you can see all of the stuff that you can change, but I normally just leave these settings on the default. But I just want to show you this so you can see all of the options that you have control over and how you can change the start menu and customize it so you can build a start menu that you like. Now, if we go to taskbar, this is probably the main reason why I like using StartAllBack, because the free programs that I've had a look at on this channel in the past few videos didn't give me exactly what I wanted with regards to the taskbar. So what I like to do is to have it as small as possible, like that. And I also set the icon margins to the smallest as possible. Now I know this might not be for everyone, but I'm showing you what I normally do. Then you have the option of changing the start button icon. I like the normal Windows 11 icon, so I leave that selected. So one of the reasons I like StartAllBack is to make the taskbar small. The second thing is you can change the location of the taskbar, which I like to have at the top. And the reason I like to have it at the top is because most of the time in Windows, we spend time in the browser and we're navigating tabs here at the top of the screen. So it's just much easier to navigate to the top of the screen here and get to icons and the start menu that I want to access, as well as the system tray icons here, compared to having the taskbar at the bottom of the screen and then moving the mouse all across the screen. That's just my personal preference, and you can leave a comment down below telling me how wrong I am and how bad that actually is. I don't care. That's the way I like to use my computer, and you can use your computer the way that you like. Now, another thing that I like with regards to the taskbar styling here is to turn on dynamic transparency, and that makes the entire taskbar completely transparent. Now you also have some other options here, like combining the taskbar buttons. You can always combine them and hide the labels as well, only when the taskbar is full, or never. And if you set it to never, then you'll have these labels on the taskbar icons. I always hide the labels. I don't like to have it centered in the screen here, so I leave that off as well. And then you have the option of segmenting these taskbars here. I don't like that either, so I just leave that turned off as well. Now, if we have a look at the tray icons here, which are the system tray icons here, you can choose the flyout style. So you can have the Windows 11 flyouts, or the Windows 10 flyouts, or the Windows 7 flyouts where it's possible. I like to have the Windows 10 flyouts selected, where I have this soundbar and that network icon there. But you also have the option of changing this to Windows 7, and it'll use the Windows 7 flyouts for these icons where it's possible. I'm going to leave that on Windows 10, but now you have some more options here where you can turn the system icons on or off. So first off, for the taskbar, if you wanted to enable the search icon, if I click on that icon there and I enable the search box, you'll see that I have the search icon here. I always have that hidden, but I just wanted to show you that you can change that here. It's the same with the task view button, and it's also the same with the widgets. I don't use any of that, so I just leave that unselected. And then you have some other options here. So for example, you've got the language switcher. If I click on that and set it to off, you can see that the language switcher has now disappeared. And it's the same if I go ahead and disable the action center or the notification pane, then the notification icon is also hidden. Now you can do that with all of these other options here as well. If you wanted to hide these icons here, you can turn off the other system tray icons and you won't see those as well. But I just leave that set to on. And if you want, you can just select this setting here, which will always show all of the app icons without hiding it with this arrow here. So I'm going to leave that selected. Then if we go over to the Explorer section, you can use the Windows 11 command bar, the Windows 10 ribbon, or the Windows 7 command bar. Now that is the File Explorer here. So if I set this to the Windows 10 ribbon UI and we reopen it, you'll see that is the Windows 10 ribbon, which is what I like using. But you can also use the Windows 7 command bar, which is just this File, Edit, View, and Tools option here. So I like to have this set to Windows 10. Then you can have this mica effect on top. You can use the classic search box, new icons, and the new icons is basically what's added with StartAllBack. If I disable that and then open the File Explorer again, this is like the classic Windows 10 icons. But I think the new icons look pretty good, so I always leave that enabled. Now you can use the classic context menus, which is referring to this right-click menu here. You can restore the control panel applets, which is basically if you go to control panel and you, for example, choose system, it's going to take you to the old system page and it won't redirect you to the Windows 11 settings. Then you have this option to colorize everything with the accent color in Windows, which is what I like to have selected as well. Now you might see that although the taskbar is transparent as soon as I click on the Start button, it uses the accent color of the light theme of Windows. So if I go and I enable the dark theme in Windows, I change this to dark, then you can see it's transparent until I click on the Start menu, and then it changes it to the accent color or the background color that I have selected here. If we go to the Advanced section, if you wanted to, you can also use a custom Start menu color and custom taskbar color. And if you select these options, you can also choose between clear, blur, and acrylic. So one of the things you can do here is to select both of these items and then change this setting to clear, for example, which will basically give you this see-through type of Start menu here. For this video, I'm just going to deselect that and then use the previous version that I had here. Then you also have some other settings here where you can store and display recently opened programs and display recently opened items, which are these settings in the Start menu here. Now, if you go to the About page here, this is where you can enter a license key. And as you can see, you get 100 days where you can use StartAllBack for free. So 100 days is plenty of time for you to test out this program and see if it will work for you. Like I said, I've been using it for a month now and I haven't had any issues with it yet. So if you want to use StartAllBack as a shell replacement on Windows 11, you can go ahead and you can try it out for yourself. And if you're wondering how to get back to the StartAllBack settings, you can right click on the taskbar and then select Properties, which will take you back to this configuration, or you can go to the control panel and then you'll have this StartAllBack entry here that you can select, and then you can also get back to the settings that way. Today we're taking a look at how you can install a custom mouse cursor on Windows 10 and Windows 11, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how you can download and use cool pre-made cursors, how you can get and use macOS cursors on Windows, and then finally I'm going to be showing you how I create my own custom mouse cursor live in this video. If you've watched my channel for a while, you would have seen that I use a custom mouse cursor, which is this one that I'm using now. And this mouse cursor is created by a guy called Jeffrey Creations, and it's hosted on DeviantArt, and it's called Windows 11 Cursors Concept version 2, and this is basically what it looks like. You get a black version and a white version, and I've already made a guide on how you can install this cursor. I've got it on my website and I've got a video about it too, but that's not what this video is going to be about. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how you can use the cursors by Bibata, which is an open source project hosted on GitHub, but it also has a premium version. On this GitHub page here, if you scroll down, you're going to see a bunch of information and you're going to see some pre-made cursors. Now, these pictures aren't fully up to date with what he actually has on this GitHub repo here, but you've got the Amber theme, you've got the Classic theme, which is basically the cursor that I'm using now by Jeffrey Creations, and then you also have the white version down here with some other versions too. If you scroll down on this page, you can see some more info about the different variants and the different cursor sizes, the colors, how to get it, and a whole bunch of other information. But what I'm going to be showing you here is how to install these pre-made cursors, and I'll download the classic black cursor and just install it as an example. So to download one of these cursors, on the GitHub page here, you're going to go to the Releases tab on the right, you're going to click on the latest release, and then you're going to find a whole bunch of assets here. Now, the one that I'm looking for here is the modern classic Windows zip file. So you'll see that there's also a modern classic right Windows, and that's if you use a left-handed mouse and you want the cursor to be looking in the opposite direction. For most people, the normal Windows zip file is going to be what you download, and you also have this available for Linux. Although if you go to his official website, you can see that these cursors are pre-installed on Linux Mint already, and Android, and also Manjaro. But to get back to downloading and installing it, you're going to find the one that you want to use. So I want to use the modern classic Windows cursor. So I'm going to download the Windows zip file here. Then once that's finished, just going to show it in the downloads folder. Then right click, I'm going to extract it, and then once it's extracted, you'll have 3 different variants. You'll have an extra large, a large, and a regular. I'm just going to go with the regular one here. Double click on that, and then inside of this folder, you're going to find an install.inf file. If you right click on that and then click on install, it's going to open up the mouse properties on your computer. Then just make sure that the scheme is set to the cursor that you just applied. As you can see, I've also got the Jeffrey Creations cursor here, but I want to use the Bibata cursor now, so I'm going to select that, then click on OK. If you do get any prompts to replace the scheme, just click yes, and then you'll have that cursor installed on your computer. The next thing I want to show you is if we go to this GitHub user's main page, he has some more GitHub repos here. So he's got the Apple cursor, he's got the Breeze X cursor, Google cursor, as well as a banana cursor. So for example, on the Apple cursor page here, if we scroll down, this is free and open source macOS cursors. So if you wanted the macOS cursors on your Windows machine, you can follow the same steps as before. Just go to the latest release on the Apple cursor page, then scroll down, and then you want to find your preferred cursor. So it's got macOS white cursors and then the normal macOS cursors for Windows. For this example, let's use the white cursor. So I'm going to download that Windows zip file. Once it's downloaded, I'm going to follow the exact same steps by just extracting the zip file, opening the folder. I'm going to go with the regular one again. I'll find the install file, right click on that, and then click on install. And then the mouse properties window will open again. Just make sure that the scheme is selected. Click on OK. You might get this prompt. That's fine. Just click on yes, and then it'll change the cursor to the macOS cursors. So now you can see that the cursor has changed. If I hover over any of these, I've now got the Mac cursors on Windows. So that's going to be the same with any of these other repos here. So he's got the Breeze pack, which looks like this. If you're more into something like that, this is the Google cursor, and here's some screenshots of what those look like. He's also got the banana cursor, if you want a banana cursor on your computer. But now if you go back to the main repository here, you'll see that he also has a website. On his website, you can go to the Studio tab here, and then you also have access to the modern or original cursors here and the presets like the Amber, Classic, or Ice, and you can see what those look like. But you also have the option of making a custom cursor by clicking on this custom button here. And then up here, you can toggle how much control you want over this cursor, how many colors you want to add to it. Now in this video, I want to create a cursor that matches the current theme of my website, which is basically dark gray with yellow or gold. So I'm going to go ahead, and for the base color, I'm going to change that to the dark gray color. And the outline, I'm going to make the bright yellow or gold. The background, I'm also going to make that dark gray. And then for these spinning wheels, I'm going to make all of those gray as well, except for watch color 3, which is going to be yellow as well. So that's what I'm going to do. The other thing you can also do is you can make these watch colors other colors, and if I change watch color 1, for example, to the yellow as well, you'll see there's now 2 spinning cubes, and these watch colors, they spin at different speeds, as you can see. And maybe I'll change watch color 1 and watch color 3, so it's always going to spin like that while the cursor is working. So I'm going to apply that, and this is what the cursor is going to look like. And you can go ahead and download it, and then you can choose either for Linux or Windows, but you have to have a look at the following. So down here, you'll see that he has monthly available downloads that people can download for free. And once that's been exceeded, you're going to have trouble downloading a custom cursor. And you can see that each monthly sponsorship basically increases the download counts. So most probably if I try and download this for Windows, it's going to say that the download limit has been exceeded. Yes, so as you can see, the download limit has been exceeded. And at this point, if you want the cursor, you have no other option than getting Pro. So that's exactly what I'm going to do in this video. I'm going to upgrade to Pro, and if you click on Get Pro, you can find some instructions on exactly what to do here. So basically what you need to do is you need to start sponsoring the developer of this app at a monthly tier, and you can do that by sponsoring $1 a month. And I'm pretty sure that you can cancel your subscription after a month if you just want to download the cursor. But that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to sponsor the $1 a month. So you'll need to fill out your billing information and add a payment method. And then you can just go ahead and sponsor this guy. And then once you've done that, if you go back to his website and then you connect your GitHub account and authorize his website to connect your GitHub account to the website, then you'll be able to download the cursor. So I'll just have to create it again quickly. So I'm going to apply that. I'm going to leave it on 24 pixels for now. And you also have the option of using the original cursor where the designs are going to look like that instead of this cursor. But I like the modern design. So I'm going to go ahead and download this for Windows. It's going to create and process that cursor. And once it's finished, it's going to download it. So let me just go and then extract this to the folder, and let's apply it by right-clicking the install file, then clicking on install, and then clicking on OK. And there I've got my custom-made cursor, which actually seems to be transparent and does not have the dark gray background. So I'm not sure if this code actually makes it transparent. So I think I entered the colors wrong here. What I needed to do is leave a hash in the front. So let's do that. And let's see if I try and download this cursor, if it's still going to be see-through. So if I apply that and then download it, let's see how that turns out. And then just install it. And now I can see that the gray color is there. And now the cursor is gray with a yellow outline. So I guess that's something important to remember if you want to do this yourself. Remember that you have to have a hashtag at the front there, or else the color isn't going to be processed properly. So while I'm at it, let me just create a white cursor as well, just to see what that looks like. And then apply that, install that, accept this prompt. And then we've got a white and yellow cursor, which does not look too good, if I'm being honest. I can obviously go back and create as many cursors as I want now because I'm a sponsor, and I think that's really cool because now you can just go and create custom cursors whenever you feel like it. It basically costs nothing because $1 a month is honestly nothing. So to wrap up this video, I really like this open source project. If you don't want to spend any money and you don't care about creating your own cursor, then just go ahead and use these pre-made cursors, which are all free. And you can get those directly on the GitHub page here, like I showed you how to download at the start of this video. But if you want to create your own custom cursor, then you can become a sponsor. You can create your own custom cursor here, download it, and then make sure that your cursor looks different than everyone else's. Today, we're taking a look at Lively Wallpaper, which is a free and open source application that's designed to bring your desktop to life by setting animated and interactive wallpapers on your desktop. So basically you can set videos as desktop backgrounds, and you can also choose some other wallpapers that's interactive, meaning when you move your mouse or when you press certain buttons on the keyboard, the wallpaper actually responds to that. So Lively Wallpaper can be downloaded from many locations, including its own dedicated website. And as you can most probably see on the website here, it won the Microsoft Store App Rewards in 2023. So it is a highly rated application. But we're going to download it and then test it out, and I'll show you some of the features that you can use to customize your Windows desktop. So clicking on the download button, we've got two download locations, either from the Microsoft Store or we can download the installer directly. But just so you know, it is also available on the Microsoft Store, and it's got a 4.5 star rating. So once you've installed Lively Wallpaper and you've launched it, this is the screen you'll be seeing. The first tab is the Library tab, and basically here you have some preset options from wallpapers that you can choose from, and there's 12 at the time of this recording. Now most of these wallpapers here are interactive. So as you can see from the first option here, which is called Fluids, it reacts with the system audio and your mouse cursor. So if you want to set one of these wallpapers, you can just click on it, or you can click on the ellipsis menu next to it, and then you can set it as the wallpaper. So I'm just going to click on the wallpaper, and then it's going to set that wallpaper as my current desktop wallpaper. So you'll see as I move my mouse, this wallpaper reacts to it. Now, something very important I want to mention to you guys is at the time of this video recording, the latest version of Windows 11 is 24H2, and I actually had some issues during this recording getting these live wallpapers to work. So how I fixed the issue of the wallpaper not displaying was by right-clicking on the desktop and then going to View and then checking Show Desktop Icons. That made the wallpaper appear when I selected it, because my desktop icons was turned off. But now you can see, even if I toggle off Show Desktop Icons, it still works and the wallpaper is still displayed. But just for some of you that might run into the same issue on Windows 11, or maybe even on Windows 10 as well, I don't know. The fix for me was right-clicking the desktop, clicking on View, and then showing the desktop icons. But you can see I don't have any desktop icons anyway. But moving on, like I said, you've got these preset options here. So if you're in the mood for rain, you can select the rain wallpaper, and then you can see this also interacts or moves as I move the mouse, although the droplets don't interact with the cursor itself. So these are some preset options, like I said, and you can go through these on your own time and set one of these preset options if you're into one of them. I'm not going to be showing you every single one in this video. I want to go through some of the other features that the application has. So something I want to draw your attention to is this button right here. If I click on that, it says 2 active wallpapers. Now, I've got a dual screen setup. I've got 2 monitors, and you can see currently it's set to duplicate. So this wallpaper is set on both monitors. I can change the placement method to screen 1 only, which is then only shown on my main monitor, and the other monitor has my default wallpaper that it had before. Or I can span it across multiple screens, so the wallpaper is stretched or enlarged to show on both monitors. So this will also help you if you have widescreen monitors or if you have more than 2 monitors even. The point is you have some settings that you can set with regards to how you want these desktop wallpapers to be displayed. I'm just going to set it to duplicate because that's what I had before. And then you also have this option to always pick the screen when choosing a wallpaper. So if you want to use this option that says always pick the screen when choosing wallpaper, then you'll have to choose the screen setting, and then you can select either one of the monitors and then select this option and then click on OK. So what will happen now is if I choose another wallpaper, it'll prompt me to choose the display that I want to show this wallpaper on. So you can see currently I already have the rain wallpaper on my primary monitor, but if I choose the second display for the other wallpaper that I just selected, and we go to the wallpapers here, you'll see that display 2 now has a different wallpaper than display 1. So if you want to have different wallpapers, different live wallpapers on separate monitors, you can do that by using this setting. So let's say that you don't want to use any of these preset wallpapers. You can actually set your own wallpaper. And to do that, you can click on the plus button here that will give you the option to add a wallpaper. Then you can either simply drag and drop video files into this section here, or you can click on this button to choose a file, and then you can select a file that's saved on your computer that you want to have as a video background, or you also have the option of entering a URL from a web page that you want to have as your desktop background. So let me show you what that looks like. If you come over to YouTube and you just do a search for animated wallpaper, you'll find a bunch of different results. You can see most of these are 4K or Ultra HD. Then you can choose any video on YouTube you'd like to use for your animated wallpaper. So I'm just going to choose one of the top results here and then pause the video. And then I'm just going to copy this URL by pressing Ctrl+C. Then I'm just going to paste it into this field here. And then I'm going to press on this arrow button here, and that's going to load the video. Now you can actually give your wallpaper a title. So let's just call it abstract. You can enter a description if you want, fill out the author field, and then the website link you'll leave as is. So I'm just going to click on OK. And then that video I got from YouTube will be set as the animated wallpaper. So you can use this for different things. Let's say we want to have something like a car that's driving. I'll just copy this link as well. Then I'll just add a new wallpaper, paste the YouTube address in there, and then press the arrow button. Again, I'll just call this Supra and then click on OK. It's going to load the wallpaper. And now I'll have this nice Supra that's driving endlessly as my live wallpaper. Now, let's say you don't want to use a YouTube video as your desktop wallpaper. You want to use another video. Maybe it's a video you took yourself, or just another video file that's saved on your computer. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to download a video from Pexels, and Pexels is one of the most popular free stock photos and royalty-free images and videos websites. So I'm just going to search for something simple like a looping animation. I'll just select this looping video, and then I'm going to click on the download options, and the highest resolution this is available in is Full HD. So I'm just going to download that. But this website also has 4K videos. I'll just save that in a directory that I created for Lively wallpapers. So I created a Lively folder in my videos folder, and that's where I'll save that video file. So now back in Lively, you can add a new wallpaper, and then you have 2 options. You can either choose a file and then navigate to the file, or you can just drag and drop it from the window here, and then you can give it a title if you like. I'm just going to leave it as is and then click on OK, and that's going to load the wallpaper, which will then set it as the desktop background. So now you can see the desktop wallpaper is set to the video that I downloaded and then added to Lively wallpaper. Now I'm just going to change this back to the raindrops for now, so it's not so distracting. So the next thing I want to draw your attention to is that there is a gallery tab, but it just says coming soon. And I guess the developer will still implement a gallery here where you can choose from live wallpapers that's hosted by other people, and that's not part of the application like these ones. If we click on the settings icon, here's where we get to a whole bunch of other settings, and I won't be able to go through every single one in this video. It's just going to take too much time, but I will highlight some of the most important ones. So you can have Lively start with Windows. Then you have an option to set the system tray icon, which is the icon that you have there. And I recommend keeping this on so you can always get to Lively wallpaper easily. Then another important setting is if you set a video, whether that be from YouTube or a file that you downloaded as a wallpaper, and that video has sound, the sound is going to be constantly playing and it might be really distracting. So that's why you have this audio tab here where you can control the volume level of all the wallpapers. So I recommend just setting this to 0 so that you don't hear the sound from those videos that you set as wallpapers. And then for those of you that's concerned about performance, there is a performance tab here. And if you click on it, you'll find a few settings like pausing the wallpapers when an application is full screen. So for example, when you're gaming, the wallpaper will be paused so that it doesn't take any other resources while you're gaming. Then you can also set the same option for when an application is focused. So these are already set by default to the recommended values. The same for laptops when you're on battery power or when on battery saver, what you want Lively wallpaper to do in both of those cases. And then you also have an option to pause it when you're using a remote desktop. And then the display pause rule, you can pause the wallpaper on all screens or only the screen that the application is focused on. So basically only the screen that a game is running on or a resource intensive application is running on. Lastly, you can go to application rules and then you can add specific applications so the wallpaper will be paused when you run these specific applications. Then next in the wallpaper tab, you have some other options here where you can control the input, the ways that you interact with the wallpaper. You can choose the mouse, the keyboard, or you can turn it off completely. You also have some options choosing the video player that you want to use for the video wallpaper and if you want to use hardware acceleration. And you also have options with regards to what's being used when you set a wallpaper using the web browser or a URL. And then lastly, you'll have an app exclusion list for music. So you can select apps to exclude from showing music details. So if you're using one of these wallpapers that shows the music that's playing on your computer, you can set apps that will not display the music on that wallpaper. Now, lastly, if you're wondering how much resources this is using, if I open the task manager and we have a look at what's running, currently it's using almost 1% of my CPU. If I close the Lively wallpaper window and it's just minimized to the system tray, you can see on my computer here, it's barely using any CPU. It's actually using no CPU at all at the moment. And then with regards to the RAM, it's about 90 to 100 megs of RAM that it's using while it's running in the background. So that's really not a lot of resources that it's using to display these animated wallpapers or these interactive wallpapers, and the application is a really lightweight application. Today we're taking a look at Sucrose Wallpaper Engine, which is another free and open source utility that you can use to customize your desktop background, and you can use it to set animated, interactive, and videos as wallpapers on your Windows PC. Now, in one of my previous videos, I covered Lively wallpaper, and Sucrose Wallpaper Engine basically does the same thing, but it also has some other settings and features that's not found in Lively Wallpaper, and that's what I want to show you in this video. So to get Sucrose Wallpaper Engine, you can just download it from this Microsoft Store downloads page or via the Microsoft Store itself. I'm just going to download it from the downloads page, and then I'll just go through the normal installation process. Now, once Sucrose Wallpaper is installed and you launch it on your computer, this is the screen that you'll be seeing. And on the first tab here, which is the library tab, you have a few options for preset wallpapers that come with Sucrose Wallpaper Engine. So some of these wallpapers do look familiar as they're also included with Lively Wallpaper. For example, in the previous video, I used this rainy wallpaper, and it looks like I ran into the same bug as I did in the previous recording, where I actually selected a wallpaper, but it's not applied. So how I fixed that in the previous recording is I right-clicked on the desktop, went to View, and then toggled the Show Desktop Icons setting. And as you can see, as soon as I toggled that setting, the wallpaper is now showing. And now it doesn't matter which setting I have, I just had to toggle that setting for it to work. So remember to do that if you run into the same bug. But as you can see here on the homepage, you have a few options that you can choose from that are preset wallpapers. If I choose the floating in space wallpaper, it'll change to that. And now I've got this astronaut swimming in space, I guess. Then it's also got the fluid simulation. If I toggle to that, you'll see this is an interactive wallpaper. So as I move the mouse, the wallpaper reacts to it. And I'm sorry for flashbanging you with this wallpaper. Now, before we get to the thing that sets Sucrose Wallpaper Engine apart from Lively Wallpaper, for those of you who's never used Sucrose Wallpaper Engine or Lively Wallpaper before, let me just show you how to add a custom wallpaper or a video as a wallpaper. So here in the UI at the top right, you'll see a Create Wallpaper button, a plus sign. If you click on that, then you can create your own theme as a GIF, or you can use a URL, a web theme, a video theme, a YouTube theme, or an application theme. So for example, if we wanted to use a YouTube video as our desktop background, you can select the YouTube theme. You can select any video, copy the URL of that video, then go back to Sucrose Wallpaper Engine. Then I'll just paste that URL. Then next you have to enter a title. So I'll just call it The Drive, which is the title of the YouTube video. For the description, I'll also title it The Drive. And then the other fields you don't have to fill out, you can just leave those. And then you can click on Create. And what that's going to do is it's going to set that video from YouTube that you just selected as your desktop background. And it took a while to load to a better resolution, but as you can see, now I have that YouTube video as a desktop background. So once again, if you come over to the Add Theme button to create a wallpaper, you've got a few different options here, and you can use whichever one you like. One of the other popular ones is using a video theme, where you basically choose a video file that's saved on your computer and then set that as your desktop background. But I've covered most of this in the previous video as well about Lively Wallpaper, and since these two apps basically work the same way, I'm not going to go over those things in depth again. I do want to get to the thing that in my opinion sets Sucrose Wallpaper Engine apart from Lively Wallpaper, and that is the fact that you can go to the store and that you can search for wallpapers that's made by other creators. So I've just selected the store tab, and you can see there's a bunch of categories here that we can go through to choose wallpapers and discover new animated wallpapers. But before we dive into this, I want to go to the settings first, because if you go to the settings and you go to the personal tab, you'll find this option here that says unsafe content and whether to display content marked as not safe for work in the store. And this is enabled by default. So I'm going to disable this, and I suggest that you guys do the same because we don't want to see unsafe content, hey? So if we go back and we go to the store, as I mentioned, there's a bunch of different categories here, and I'm not going to go through all of them in this video. The point is to show you that inside of Sucrose Wallpaper Engine, it's much easier to discover new animated wallpapers than it is compared to Lively Wallpaper at the time of this recording. So I'm just going to choose one of these categories like architecture and buildings. We've got one wallpaper here, so I'll just click on that to download it, and there you go. Now we have that wallpaper that was found in the store set as my desktop wallpaper. If I do a search for a wallpaper, but if I put the term calm, I'll just select this Paradise wallpaper, and now we've got this calm Paradise wallpaper set as the desktop background. So I think you get the idea. You can browse the store for whatever wallpaper you'd like, and there's a ton of options to choose from. Now, if we move on to some of the other icons here in the UI, we've got this wallpaper cycling icon. So you have the option to choose whether the wallpaper changes automatically or not. Then you can set a time interval, the transition mode, and then you can also reset the cycle list to default. So if we close that and we go to the next icon, which is the display preferences, you can see I have two monitors. If you have more than two, all of your monitors will show up here. And then you can see we do have a placement mode option. So we have the option to apply the wallpaper to the selected screen only, which in this case would be my primary monitor, or we can expand it across screens, which means it's going to show on all monitors. And you can see as I've selected that, it looks like it's been cut off in my main monitor. So that setting might not work properly at the time of this recording. So I'll just set it back to the selected screen only. And then we also have duplicate the same wallpaper, which for me is grayed out. I can't select that. So in my testing, at least, it looks like there needs to be some work done on the display preferences side of this application, as not all options are available, and the expand across screens one is not working properly for me. But regardless, if we go over to the settings, I want to go through some of these settings with you. And some of the settings I want to draw your attention to is the following. You can choose if you want Sucrose Wallpaper Engine to start up when your computer starts up, and whether you want to show the notification area icon. And then one of the very important things with these wallpaper apps is the engine volume. So some of these wallpapers do have sound, or the videos have sound that you set as wallpapers, and you'll hear that sound constantly on your PC. So those sounds can become quite distracting when you're trying to do something else like watch videos or whatever. So what I recommend is just turning the sound all the way down so that you don't hear any sound coming from those video wallpapers. Then in the performance tab, you have a pause rule option. So this determines the rule for pausing your wallpapers based on your performance settings. So here you have two options, either heavy or light. And I have to be honest, I don't know quite exactly what these two mean. I'm guessing we'll have to look at the documents for that. But regardless, you do have an option to pause the wallpaper. But if we look at more of these settings, we do have a system resources section. So here you can actually choose what happens to the wallpaper based on the processor usage, graphics usage, memory usage, and network usage. So here we have the options to either resume the wallpaper, pause it, or close it completely. And next to that, we also have this expand icon where you can choose when this setting is applied. So if we expand all of these, you can see that you can set your processor usage, the graphics usage, then you can also set the memory usage, and you have network usage settings that you have really granular control over to make the application do exactly what you want depending on how your hardware is performing. Then you also have some operating system options with regards to what happens to the wallpaper when your computer is locked, when you put it to sleep mode, when a user is switched, when you log out, or when the screensaver starts. And you basically have the same options: close, pause, or resume. And then you also have laptop battery power, what happens to the wallpaper when you're running on battery power and battery saver. And then some other general system entries like virtualization, remote desktop, full screen mode, or focus mode. So what happens to the wallpaper when any application is running in full screen mode? If you play games and you play those games in full screen mode, then you can set the full screen mode to close or pause so it doesn't use any resources while you're gaming, and you can basically do that for full screen mode and focus mode. So although I said I don't know exactly what this pause rule means for pausing the wallpaper based on your performance settings, with Sucrose Wallpaper Engine you do have really granular control over exactly what happens to the wallpaper based on what is happening with your computer. If we move over to the wallpaper tab, you have an option to choose the interaction method. So basically, if you have an interactive wallpaper set as your desktop background, you can choose how you want to control it with the mouse and keyboard, the keyboard only, the mouse only, or if you want to close it completely. And then you also have an interaction module with some more settings. And then you have some other general wallpaper settings like your screen layout, the stretch mode, and whether you want to use hardware acceleration for supported wallpapers. You can change the extensions that you use when playing GIFs or videos. And then lastly, you have some options here to choose which engines are used when you get wallpapers from a URL or from YouTube or from the web. And here you can choose between these two options. Now, just to have a look at the resources that Sucrose Wallpaper Engine uses while it's running in the background, you can see it's barely using any CPU at all, not even 1% at the moment. And with regards to the RAM, it's about 120 megs. So it is a little bit more than Lively Wallpaper, which was around 100 megs when I had the wallpaper active. But regardless, that's really not a lot of memory to be using on a modern computer, and I wouldn't say that this application is resource intensive at all. So to sum it all up, I do think Sucrose Wallpaper Engine is a great application when it comes to customizing your desktop background. I know I've compared it a lot to Lively Wallpaper, but it is because it's kind of a Lively Wallpaper clone. Like I said, what I think does set it apart is that the store is actually working so that you can easily discover new wallpapers and set those as your desktop background. And with all of that being said, I really hope this video was of some sort of value to you. If it was, please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll talk to all of you guys soon.